The Seminole Headlines 93.3 Real Talk Radio Warchant TV begins right now. Appreciate you always. There's Ira. There is no Corey today. He often shirks his responsibilities. But Ira and I know we roll on Big River. We're going to do this thing, and we're going to do it by beginning the show as we're wont to do by saying, yay, sausage. Register Sausage, whose logo you see if you're watching on Warchant TV, has been a great sponsor for the show, and we appreciate it always. Ira, tell everybody where they get Register Sausage.
You know, I was at the grocery store yesterday, Jeff, our neighborhood grocery store, the one that you and I share, and now it's become a running joke. Like literally a guy comes across the store to me to give me grief about not having registers in my cart. He's in on the joke. He gets the show.
He gets it. He knows.
And so it was pretty funny. But I did feel guilted. I was like, man, I need to go get some, even though I have some in the fridge, which you guys should have as well. If you're in Florida, Georgia, Alabama, up into the Carolinas now, guys, if you are in this part of the country, go to your local grocery store. They should have Register Sausage, all the different varieties, the breakfast pack, the spicy, the hot, the andouille.
Yes.
By the way, our guy Sean he was trying to phonetically explain to me how andouille is really supposed to be pronounced, and I was like, Sean, it's part of the show now. Yeah. It's andouille, but all the different varieties, the jalapeno cheddar, which is a classic. It's premium pork sausage, not filled with all the fillers and artificial ingredients that some of these other brands use. And if you're not in this part of the country, go to first of all, move down here, hang out with your boys. But if you live elsewhere, go to registermeats.com. That's the website. They'll have it delivered to you. Comes fresh in a cooler. And Ben, who runs the company, is a Noles, big FSU guy. A lot of FSU guys involved in the company. So support Register Sausage because they support Seminole Headlines.
That's well done and thorough. I appreciate that. By the way, Ira, I saw that you made an appearance this morning. I did not hear it, but I guess you were on Danny and Dusty, or Dusty and Danny, whatever that is.
What do you think they could be asking about? What could we be talking about on this fine morning?
Well, I wanted to lead with it because we were going to have to talk about it one way or the other. It'll probably be the last time we have to talk about it until maybe after that game or the week of that game. I don't know. Maybe we will in Charlotte. I suppose it'll get brought up. But I I was curious. Not just what they asked of you, but also, given that Danny Cannell is a former, obviously, FSU quarterback and has strong opinions about leadership and quarterback play and FSU all in one, what was the conversation like? How did that go?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Danny loves it necessarily. No. I don't think it's necessarily his cup of tea. He talked about, he was actually talking a little bit before I got on about how, Coach Bowden was very big about, especially the rivalry games, the big games, not saying anything that's going to kind of create attention or kind of get under the other team's skin. You don't want to find a reason to motivate the other team. But I think that he also, understands that we're in June. These comments are not going to be plastered on their bulletin boards or locker rooms, the days before the Florida State game. And so, I think they were more curious than anything. Where's this come from? You got a guy in Tommy Castellanos who played at Boston College, didn't win a lot of big games, has not been on a big stage very often. Florida State's coming off at 2-10. I think it was just kind of the oddity of it, which is, I think a lot of people are kind of like, what's going on? What's going on down there in Tallahassee?
Yeah.
But Corey's got a column on it, and it'll be up on the website at warchant.com. By the time this airs, we're recording this in the morning, so it probably was already up for a couple hours. And I agree with Corey, which is rare. It doesn't happen often.
No.
But Corey has the same take I have. It's like, listen, it's kind of a little bit refreshing. Maybe some of the comments were a little bit over the edge, but for the most part, after what you saw a quarterback from Florida State last year, where, guys who are completely lacking in confidence in themselves and their teams, maybe it's not the worst thing in the world to have a little bit of confidence in. So that's kind of where I'm at. They didn't seem to have a strong opinion. I think they were more just curious what's going on down there in Tallahassee.
Well, it is a curious thing. I had a lot of texts from people all over the country that are Noles that were asking me like, hey, man, what's that kid like? I mean, because that's what happens is it feeds this curiosity where people are like, I don't really know anything about him except for that day that he ran all over a very sick and tired defensive unit in the second half. That's really all anybody knows, right? They don't even really remember the nondescript game against Boston College a year ago. Like the game last year against Boston College coming back from Ireland just cemented our worst fears was that they sucked and that this was going to spiral. But it wasn't like he did anything. I mean, all he did was throw a wheel route repeatedly.
Yeah, and it was not necessarily that he couldn't have. It almost felt like it was like they had him on restrictor plates. Like it was like they were trying to not use him, not do more, not run him. We thought at the time, maybe they're trying to prevent any kind of injury or anything like that, just kind of taking it easy because they had that game well in hand without him being Superman. But no, what we found out later was, no, this is just Bill O'Brien wants him to conform to his offense, doesn't want him to scramble around and make plays. And I thought that was the biggest takeaway, that's tangible from that article, which we all knew, but I think it was good to hear Tommy really talk about it. This is going to be Tommy's offense. They are building it around him. They're building around his skill set, his unique skill set. They're not going to panic if he goes off script. They're kind of building that into what they're doing. Now it may not work out. It may not be good enough to beat Alabama. They may not be good enough to beat Alabama, but you can tell he gets the message. Like this is going to be his offense. And I think from that standpoint, it's got to fill him with so much confidence because he's never had that before.
It's an important point, Ira. I think that when you choose the route that Mike Norvell has chosen, which is to go and raise the floor with an offense that if you're competent running it, guarantees you a certain number of wins against the middling competition of the ACC. You're going to win. I think presumably you do this so that you can win 6 games minimum, right? That you raise the floor. Because if you run the ball successfully, and you should be able to do that against many of the teams, maybe not Alabama, maybe not Clemson, we'll see, and some of the bigger names on the schedule, but certainly against the others, then you feel like, okay, we've raised the floor. There's no chance to replicate 2 wins or anything godforsaken like that. We're going to have a competent offense. But the other thing you do when you make this decision is that you better find a guy that suits the system year one, can come in and really utilize the most dangerous element and aspect of that offense, which is the math-changing ability to run the quarterback, right? Defenses now have to account for not just a runner, a dynamic runner. That matters. Now, it may very well be he doesn't have the body type to make it through a season doing this. But you've embraced this. You've decided this is what you're going to be. And you'll have to figure out when to push the gas and when to back off. And you and I have talked about that some. Hey, look, you're not going to need to run them against East Texas, whatever. Right. But you are going to need to run the hell out of them in the biggest games of the year. And you would want him to know, man, hey, it's all right. If it ain't there, go. Use that skill. We want you to run. Look, I'm going to give you lots of opportunities to read this thing and go. I mean, go get 6 yards. And I think the thing of it is that is the hope that you have in the Alabama game. I would argue if we were just in a vacuum looking at this matchup and people see 12.5 as the spread and they're like, man, why is it such a big spread? Well, look, if we're being honest, it's not just based on 2 and 10. It's not just based on Alabama's reputation. If you project segment group by segment group by segment group and look at the way the NFL views these players, Alabama would have a better segment group every position on the field. Better offensive line, better defensive line, better linebackers, better safeties, better corners, every segment group would rate out, if we're talking about NFL scouts projecting, they would have a better segment group than anybody at Florida State has. And that scares the hell out of you in a vacuum. But games aren't played on paper. This is the first game of the year. It is a weird offense to have to prepare for. He is a dynamic runner. It's the first game, so you're not going to have the attrition effect of week 6, week 7, week 8. You could surprise the hell out of Alabama and find yourself in a fourth quarter game because you're running a unique offense with a quarterback that's hard to get a handle on. And we've watched things like this play out many times where the better team, hell, we were worried about that going to Ireland, Ira, that sometimes those games play out very strangely. It's first game. It's a weird location. You're not sure what you're getting. That's to Florida State's distinct advantage. It's why they have a chance, in my opinion, to pull the upset.
Yeah, and I think that, the point, so many people that you talk to, and any FSU fan who really pays attention, their number one thing that they bring up that to me is the offensive line. That offensive line was so bad last year. And this year you bring in a bunch of new guys, and not necessarily all can't miss guys. A lot of guys who played a lot of college football. There's a couple big names in there, but for the most part, it's not necessarily guys. Generally, if a fifth year or 6-year offensive lineman was great, they wouldn't be playing college football.
Correct.
They wouldn't have gone in the transfer portal. So Florida State has got guys that are experienced. Well, we saw guys that were experienced a year ago. So I think there's a PTSD from a lot of FSU fans to is this line really going to be decent? And if they're not, does any of this else matter? Does it matter that you got Deuce Robinson? Does it matter that you have Usman Kroma if you don't have an offensive line? What I would say is, to your point about having a mobile quarterback, is the reason we didn't think FSU's offensive line was terrible in 2022 and 2023 was because they had a mobile quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And it's no mystery why, going back to Jayshon Corbin, to Trayshawn Ward, to was LaDamian Webb, I can't remember the running back they had years ago. These running backs all averaged 6 yards a carry. Well, it's because of Jordan Travis, and because defenses could not sell out on the running back. They had to worry about that quarterback. The reason the offensive line the reason the running game was not very good in the second half of 2023 is defenses finally realized, Jordan's never going to keep the ball.
He's not keeping it.
And so now we don't have to worry about that. We can focus on the running game. And then now all of a sudden the running got much tougher sledding. And then last year, man, when you've got DJ at quarterback, and it was very clear early on that he was not going to run. He was not going to give it. He did not feel good running it. And when he did keep it, he couldn't do anything with it. Well, now, man, you're running with a not mobile quarterback, no threat there, and going back to kind of an average offensive line. Well, here you are now. You're flipping the script. You're going back to what it was before. So I think the offensive line is going to look a whole lot better just because of Tommy Castellanos. There's no secret. They are going to run him. They want to run him. It's going to be a big part of what they do. The RPOs are going to be a big part of what they do. And that takes so much pressure off the offensive line. So kind of going back to your initial point, yeah, I think that's exactly what Mike Norvell and Gus Malzahn were thinking when they came together, their marriage, and they identified Tommy Castellanos as the guy. What gets us back to respectability? And having a quarterback like him and in a system like this gets you back to respectability. Is it going to be good enough to beat Clemson on the road late in the year? Probably not. But you don't have necessarily the growing pains where you're trying to build something for the future. This year is very much about, to Tommy Castellanos' point, kind of saving jobs, getting the program back on solid footing. Then you have a good year. Maybe then you go back in the portal, you kind of get some credibility back, and you can go make a run for a better team that's more positioned for those big games in the future. But this year, I agree. I think the whole idea was get back to respectability, and having a quarterback like Tommy Castellanos raises that floor, as you said.
Well, and you move the spot in the passing game. So when you do want to throw the football, he's not going to have him doing what Bill O'Brien had him doing. He's not going to be like, hey, 3-step drop, 5-step drop, and go through your progressions and let it fly. First of all, he's not an accurate enough passer to do that, or he hasn't been. Secondly, that's not his game. He's also tiny. He's not going to be looking over that offensive line and surveying the field, and you're going to move him off the spot. It's frustrating for a defense to deal with that. I mean, in a one-game scenario, especially it's your first game of the year, you can get caught up in a frustration and a sense of, oh man, every time this guy, he's out wide. Now they knew last year, to your point, every time DJ dropped back, I'll meet you at the quarterback. He ain't going anywhere. Right. And we should have, in retrospect, I mean, we kind of got a little worried. I remember having a conversation with you at practice. Like, I didn't like when DJ started practice, no knee brace.
Right.
We get into pads, all of a sudden he's got a sleeve followed by a brace. I said on the air, and I was trying to be very careful because we have to be careful when we talk about injuries, that I wasn't in love with that. Didn't seem like it was an ideal situation that a guy who didn't have any restrictions running the ball at Oregon State and actually ran competently when he did run was now in a brace and looks slower than I've ever remembered him being. That was never good.
And I spoke to Mike Norvell at Amelia Island. It was kind of one of those, more casual conversations. It wasn't, There were no microphones. We were just talking. And one of the things he was excited about, what DJ had showed at Oregon State, was that ability to run in those short yardage situations. Not necessarily a guy that's going to take off on 2nd and 9 or 1st and 10 and break off a 15-yard run,
Right.
but just move the chains. What a big weapon that would be. And it just never became part of anything. Because like you said, DJ would never admit that he was injured. And Mike Norvell certainly is never going to admit anybody is injured.
Correct.
But it was clear he was not even when he had opportunities to run it, he couldn't even run aggressively. It was like tiptoeing through a minefield or something. And it's like, dude, man, you can't be that. There's no point of even having you keep it if that's what you're going to do. And then if you're not going to keep it, why are you guys still running these zone read type concepts? It was it was a disaster. The other thing I would say, and again, going back to your point about just getting back to moving the football, that's where I was so frustrated with Mike Norvell last year. It felt like for so much of the season, the first half of the season, before DJ got hurt and had to miss time, it felt like Mike Norvell was still kind of holding on to this hope that this thing would come together, like that this offense would become something, as opposed to, listen, man, you're playing Memphis. Just freaking win the game. Just freaking win the game. Do whatever you got to do in this moment to win this football game. Well, man, that's what I like about Gus Malzahn. I think Gus Malzahn, going back to his high school coaching mindset and going back to his early days as Auburn, it's these are the tools I've got to work with. How can I get this job done today? Not necessarily is it going to win any awards for beauty or anything else. How can I win this football game? I think that's what Gus, I don't think he's ever lost that. And I think he'll kind of give that back to Florida State because, man, I just think Mike lost that last year. He was so focused on, it felt like he was trying to focus on fixing the big thing. It's like, man, win this football game today.
And I'd be throwing the kitchen sink at Alabama. I mean, if you're Gus, you got nothing to lose. You're a massive underdog. You have an opportunity with the element of surprise, first game of the year, new offense, player as dynamic as Tommy Castellanos. You can move the spot in the passing game. Like I'm pulling out all the stops because what do I care? Because by the way, if somehow, some way you win that game, I seriously believe, because conversely, it's not true. So what I'll say is this: if you win the game against Alabama, it changes your season. It changes the possibilities for what you can be. If you lose it, not really. Doesn't really matter. It's a non-conference game. You're a huge underdog. You're supposed to lose anyhow. As long as you don't get beat 50-3,
right?
Yeah, it's no big deal. You could lose 35-17. And I don't think it's necessarily going to be a referendum on the kind of year you could have. Now, you worry about their headspace for a lot of these kids that were on last year's team if they get their head kicked in again in an opening game. But honestly, as long as you haven't lost the team the way that Mike lost the team a year ago, it shouldn't matter if you lose that game all that much. However, if you win it, it could infuse the level of confidence we haven't seen around here for a couple of years, and it could change the belief system in that locker room of what's possible. They might begin to believe, well, hell, we just beat Alabama. And I know Alabama lost 4 times last year. They're still effing Alabama. That uniform still carries weight. They've got a ton of draftable players. That's an elite, in terms of talent, program. You win that game, now you believe you're going to beat Miami. Now you believe you've got a chance to win the ACC. Hell, you just beat one of the SEC's best. You'll believe all of those things immediately if you beat Alabama.
Yeah, the one thing you just can't have, we've been saying it all year, we'll say it up until kickoff, you just can't have the blowout loss. You can't look like you can't compete at that level. That would be devastating, not just to the players that lived through last season and lived through everything going back to the Georgia Orange Bowl, but even to the newcomers, because they'll be looking around wondering, what did we come here for? But on the flip side of it, man, I agree with you. If you win it, obviously, but even if you just play toe-to-toe with Alabama, if you just look good, if Tommy Castellanos and this offense looks like it knows what it's doing, it's going to be a challenge for teams to prepare for. They found some things on this offense, and then defensively they look competent, they play hard, they play physical. Alabama walks off that field knowing that they were in a football game, that they had to compete to win that football game. Those things I think will be huge, because it'll be nice for the fan base. It'll be nice for Florida State's perspective nationally, or the way people look at Florida State. But most importantly, you touched on it, the dudes in that locker room, man. I think those guys, if they start to believe the way Tommy Castellanos believes, if they believe in him, because that was the other thing that was so obvious last year was, man, there was just no conviction in that team. They didn't believe in themselves. They didn't believe in each other. And if they had, they would have righted the ship. Instead, they just kind of spiraled and went south. And so to me, I think, yeah, that would be such a vindication or validation for those players that I think it would give them so much confidence going into the rest of that first half of the schedule, which sets up really well for them to maybe be 5-1 or something like that, even if you lose the first game. But you got to get that confidence in that first game.
Seminole Headlines 93.3 Real Talk Radio Warchant TV continues in just a moment. We were mentioning a moment ago, you talk about confidence, infusing having something go right for a program that has not had a lot go right for it in a long time. I'm really hoping two things that Mike Norvell, you touched on it last segment, and I was thinking about it early this morning because I was preparing for the bonus hour that we do at the end of Seminole Headlines and some talking points that I wanted to get into. But part of the frustration of last year isn't the record. The record is obvious and it's disgusting, but it was that they weren't competent and they did a lot of dumb things like illegal formations left and right. After they would have a successful play, it would get called back because the formation was illegal, or movement before the snap, and just things that you're like, man, do you guys even practice? And so my thought was that Mike Norvell was probably rat trapping out of desperation. There was just an awful lot. Like you said, he just felt hell bent on, I'm going to make this work. Right. And he may have felt like he had no other choice because he had already made the bet on DJ. And so then he's like, well, I'm betting on this guy. And we brought in all this speed because I thought I was going to be able to run and throw off a play action with his big arm. That's the one strength he has. And we can't do any of it, but I can't give up on it because I built the team around it.
Right.
But at some point you have to give up on it and move on to something else. At some point you have to see the forest for the trees.
Well, I mean, or, and again, like the things that you look back to that ACC championship game when the quarterback Jordan's out, Tate Rodemaker gets hurt, you got to go to Brock Glenn. Well, their only offense in that game was Lawrence Toafili in the Wildcat. And it's like, well, why did you never see that? And Cam Davis is a guy who, from what we had heard, that was going to be a part of what the package was going to be for Cam Davis as a freshman. Maybe get some opportunities in a Wildcat because he played high school quarterback. That's what he did in high school. He's a very highly talented recruit. And no, he's not. We saw him running the football last year. He's certainly not Herschel Walker, but he would give you that threat. And it's like they wouldn't do that. It was just so infuriating, man. Like, you were never going to turn that team with DJ at quarterback and that offensive line into what you thought they could be, or any of us thought they could be. But you could have got to 5-7 or 6-6. And 6-6, as miserable as that would be while you're going through it, years from now, you'd look back and say, well, we've never had a 2-8. You never, because you always, people are 2-10. People always laugh at Florida's 4-8 season.
Oh yeah,
and with good reason. And Florida State had never had one of those. And so to go through it and just, again, not just be so devoid of hope and not find anything you can do, not find one thing. And to me, again, that's just an indictment of a coaching staff, is you've got to figure out something these guys can believe in, they can hold on to. All right, we're not what we need to be, but we got this. We have this one thing we can at least, and they never found anything they could hang on to. And that's why you saw them play the way they did. It was complete failure, man. Again, I think Mike Norvell, we've all harped on the decisions he made in the portal and maybe retaining staff and all the big picture things. But I think as he looks back on that season, I got to think he'll kick himself for not just trying to find a way to be more resourceful in the moment.
Well, so the point of me bringing that up was not to relitigate the frustrations of last year and the anger that it caused for many in this fan base. By the way, the residual effect of that it's omnipresent. I mean, we see it on the message boards. I see it in emails and on Twitter, and it becomes a topic invariably once a week. And how could it not? You can't outrun it. 2-10 is that kind of embarrassing. But I didn't bring it up to do that. I brought it up because the lack of vision from Mike and the inability to see what it was you just laid out, which was, hey, man, this isn't working. I know this is a failed season. I hate that my hunch turned out to be wrong. that bringing in DJ turned out to not work out the way that I thought it and hoped that it would. I clearly misevaluated this offensive line. I've got a lot of changes I got to make at the end of this season, but we have to play these games every Saturday. And those changes can't occur for another 2 months. And, this season's already lost. We're 0-2. I mean, what are we going to do? We're not going to win the ACC. We're not going to make the playoff. But I got to find a way to compete every Saturday. I got to find a way to not embarrass ourselves. I got to find a way
to not lose these kids.
To not lose these kids, not lose the locker room, not lose fans, not lose my effing job. Like, I got to find a way to get this. Okay, well, he never did it. He never changed anything. Well, I wonder if that was because he was the be-all, end-all. He had to do everything. He was the play caller. He was, in essence, the receivers coach. He was the guy that had to go through putting out fires everywhere all the time, and he couldn't step away from it. Well, now he's in a role in which that's demanded of him. It's the one thing he should be able to do at an elite level, because he is a CEO coach now. And if you don't believe that, just go look at his own comments. He's basically told you. And yes, his actions tell you that too. He brought in a guy who he's ceding all play calling to. All offense of strategy is going through Gus Malzahn. Gus wouldn't come here any other way. That's why he came here. He doesn't want to be a head coach. He doesn't want the responsibilities of being a head coach. He doesn't like recruiting. He doesn't want to do those things. He's older. He just wants to go back to being a mad scientist play caller, which he loves to do and always loved to do. All right, fine. That's your role. What's my role? To make sure the health of the program and the locker room and that all of this together is working seamlessly. And I'm a CEO. I've got to make that happen. He's in a position this year where if things start to falter, or any one group of people, meaning a segment group or player, is faltering, Mike should be all over that instantaneously. We should never again see the inability to step back away from this thing and get a bigger and clearer picture of what's really happening.
No, that's a great point, man. And probably worth giving him a little grace from the standpoint of, I don't think Mike Norvell had ever been through anything like that before. Certainly not as a head coach. He had never had to worry about the solutions to his problems for a football team have never been, oh man, we may lose this locker room. This team may fall apart. That was never, I think, anything he's ever had to deal with. I don't know if going back to his assistant coaching days, but certainly as a head coach. And I think the answers for Mike Norvell have always been in the playbook. Just like a lot of play callers, it's like, okay, I've got to figure out better plays. I've got to set things up better. I've got to do these things. The problem was once they would get in games, the players couldn't even execute the things he wanted them to do that were the plays that were there. I mean, again, the play that everybody laughs about with, DJ chipping the bricks in on the stadium wall. I mean, you've schemed it up perfectly. You can't do anything better as a play caller than to set up a walk-in easy. Just, I mean, it's like your kids when they were 7 and 8 could have executed that play.
Correct.
And it's just so that the answers weren't what the answers he's ever been able to find before. He couldn't scheme anything up. And so it was everything else was the problems were everything else. But the problem, like you said, is he was consumed with the things he's always had to do. And I don't think he liked this idea at first. I don't think he was super excited to turn over the offense completely to Gus Malzahn. But I do think, and I felt like we sensed that during the spring, that he did come to appreciate, okay, this is how I can impact this team. And I can do these other things. I can make sure relationships are better. I can make sure guys are in the right headspace. I can make sure that the coaches are doing what they're supposed to be doing. I think that has put him in a better place now to do what you said. So I think that all can work out really well. And I do think Gus, I think Gus is embracing this role. What I am going to be curious to see, and what I am looking forward to seeing and how it plays out. And I don't even know if those two guys know exactly how it's going to play out. I am curious to see what the conversations are going to be like in short yardage, maybe even I know they do their game plans going into the game about what are we going to do in this situation. If it's 4th and 2, if the 35-yard line going in, what are we going to do? If it's 4th and 1 on our side of the field, what are we going to do? So they're going to have some of those conversations before the game. But, man, when it's time and the game's on the line and Gus wants to go, or Gus doesn't want to go for it, and Mike wants to go for it, and Gus has got to call a play, but maybe he doesn't love this situation. Like, that's going to be very different. Mike Norvell's never operated really in that world, and Gus Malzahn hasn't operated in that world in over 15 years. So that part, I think, is going to be interesting. I think they're on the same page right now, but in the heat of the battle, that's going to be interesting because they can't know exactly how they're going to handle that.
Well, and for it to work, Mike had to do what you just described, which was come around to this idea that this is the way it has to be. I forfeited all of the things I liked about the autonomy that I had when I went 2-10. Like that, it's over. Like, you give as a parent your kids freedoms and you say, hey, you know what? If you're bringing home great grades and you're a good citizen and, you know, you're morally and ethically moving through the world, I trust you. Until I don't, until you F it up, until you wrap the car around a tree and made poor decisions. And because now then I can't trust your judgment, and I'm going to take that away from you, and I'm going to take this away from you, and I'm not going to let you be alone for too many hours of the day because I don't believe that you're going to make good decisions. Well, and Mike had it all. That's the tragedy of everything. He had turned it all around. They had won 19 straight. They had gone from being god-awful to winning 10 games, to winning 13 games. This was completely unforeseeable, but it happened, and there are consequences. And part of those consequences are you don't get to make the play calling decisions anymore. You have to bring this other guy in because our offense was a tragedy to offenses everywhere. And now you don't get to do any of this. But if you don't embrace that reality, this cannot work. If you're embittered, if you're resentful, if you're frustrated, that will show to everybody in this office, everybody in this facility, everybody on that field, and all of those players, you had better embrace what this allows you to do. That's the way to look at it, right? He loves preaching opportunity, Ira. Everything's a freaking opportunity. You lose by 30, well, it's an opportunity to see how you respond to adversity. I hate it that he says it every time, but that's his mantra, right? Well, what an opportunity we have. What an opportunity you have now to find this other role that you must embrace. You have no choice. Save your job, get the program back going in the right direction. And you know, one thing we've seen over the years, there are coaches who've had to make the tough transition from being primary play caller, whether that's on defense or offense, and then become a lesser rolled advisor to the big picture, right? They are no longer calling plays. They are no longer installing what the strategy is going to be that weekend. They have input. They're the head coach. They are instead the CEO. Some of them do it and do it well. I remember Les Miles, man. I used to rip him all the time. Yeah. And at one point I had to just admit I was wrong because Les ended up accepting his role as basically sort of a nondescript CEO coach. And they ran through fire for him. They love that version of Les. Right. Mike's got to become that.
Yeah, I think he gets it. Again, I do think is a type A personality, is somebody that's probably been a micromanager for much of his career. I think he wasn't sure what he could do. I think that's I don't think it was necessarily about the power of the play calling, but I think it was just, what do I do? Like, if I'm not doing that, how do I help this team? I think he figured that out over the course of the spring. And no, it's a great, Les Miles is a great point there. And there are some others as well. The flip side of it is there are coaches where they've reluctantly given it up. And then there's been that tug of war. You know, we saw it with Willie Taggart and Kendall Briles.
Jimbo Fisher,
yeah, his 5-year plan to turn it over at some point. But even going back to Coach Bowden, I mean, Bobby Bowden famously would allow offensive coordinators to be play callers. Mark Richt, even Daryl Dickey called plays for a little while. You know, there were coaches that he would let do it, then he would take it back, and then they would kind of go back and forth. But you knew it was his offense. Well, this is going to be completely different. You're not taking anything back from Gus Malzahn.
No.
This is Gus Malzahn knows he's the play caller. He's making all those decisions, and Mike Norvell had to be okay with that. And I think that they are in a good place now. Again, when you get in the season and then things aren't working, then now where do you go? If you're at halftime, against Alabama, or you're at halftime against on the road at Virginia, wherever, and the offense isn't really getting going, and Mike says, "Hey, Gus, have you thought about this, this, and this?" How does Gus take that input? You know, again, he's for 15 years, he hasn't had to take input from anybody. So that part has to play out. it could go great or it might not go great. But as it stands right now, I do think, to your point, I think they're in a really good place right now.
I think it's fascinating too, Ira, because I think everything I just said about Mike Norvell is going to have to be true also for this to work of Gus Malzahn. Yes. He has to understand you're not the head coach, dude. Yeah. You have the reins, you're the play caller, but a head coach has every right to come up to you when we're tied at 7 in the third quarter and this offense has been stymied. They can at that point walk in and say, hey, man, stop doing this. Let's go to this. It's his job. I mean, the head coach can tell you everything, and you can't be pissed off. You can't secretly resent it. I mean, I remember that was the biggest conversation when I was dating Christy, my wife now, as you know. I remember one day saying, hey, I'm a sports talk show host. This is after I realized I was in love with her and we might get married. And I said, I'm a sports talk show host, which means I watch the games. And you can't say that's fine as we sit here at dinner tonight and 5 years from now resent the hell out of the fact that I'm watching the games. Like, this won't work if that happens.
I'm working, honey. Yeah. Do you not see me working here?
As I crack another beer for the start of the third quarter. Yeah. But like, you can't tell me you understand that it's okay. Right. And then 5 years from now, you're tired of me watching the game. Like, that's not how this works.
I got a text very early on after Gus came in. Gus was hired and things were just kind of getting settled in. I got a text from somebody of significance at the university, and they said it's going to work. I think they said it's going to work as long as they each let each other do what they do. Like, as long as they each kind of stay out of each other's way a little bit and not try to do the other guy's job. And that's going to be, I do think it's going to be a challenge for Gus Malzahn. I mean, there's no doubt, he's not, even when he was an offensive coordinator, he was that alpha. He's used to being the guy in the room that he's the one that talks. Everybody shuts up when Gus Malzahn talks. That's how he is always operated. Well, now he's got to take a slightly different role. And again, I do think the fact that they both like each other personally, they've gone back, in their relationship 15, 20 years. I think those are all positive things. I also think that they know they need each other. So I think it's a good situation. I think it certainly can work. But I don't think it's devoid of pitfalls. I think there's probably a lot more examples that we can point to through the years, going back to, again, the end of Coach Bowden's tenure, when you bring in, you've got Kevin Steele, you bring in a Chuck Amato, you've got Jimbo Fisher over here. When you have too many guys in that room that think they should be the one calling the shots, you get more examples of those situations going poorly than you do of situations where it works great. But I do think they've got a shot because I do think they understand they need each other.
I'll never forget that voice of Chuck Amato trying to explain to all of us that he and Jimbo don't hate each other.
We get along great. I'll read this stuff and I'm like, Jimbo, did you see this?
Yeah.
Did you see this? I wish I could do an Amato voice, but yeah, that was
that
awesome.
High pitch way. That was the best. And I wanted to be like, Chuck, thou protest too much. You're telling us that you two can't stand each other with every word you say about how much you love each other.
and the problem with that, again, is you saw it play out on the team. Mm-hmm. The defense didn't like the offense. Didn't respect the offense. The coaches, the players knew the coaches hated each other.
Yeah.
There were several instances on that coaching staff of coaches who hated each other. That's not usually what you want going into a football season, and that season played out the way it did.
Less than ideal. Seminole Headlines, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV continues in a moment. Wrapping up the hour, but before we do, it's been a fun conversation already. We haven't even gotten to your headliner questions yet. This is stuff we could contemplate if you and I were hanging out having an ice-cold beer at Tavello, which is right there in Thomasville, Georgia, right up the road. If you're in Tallahassee, it's like 20 minutes away. You just roll on into Thomasville, which has become a very charming place.
It is.
Yeah, it's charming, especially that part where Tavello is. And, I like to hover around that area. I don't need the outskirts of Thomasville. I need that area of Thomasville, but I'm not going to besmirch Thomasville. I'm here to sit down and have a Tavello with you, buddy, and other folks that are in Tallahassee who haven't done so yet. You need to get off your ass and go down there to Thomasville and get you one. Get you an ice cold Tavello.
It might be time where we break out the tough love on people that have not been to Tavello yet. What is wrong with you? And the great thing is they have the tap room there, so you can check out all the different varieties. It's over a dozen different beers. They have the IPAs, the stouts, the lagers. the Coffee Blonde, which we love so much,
Mm.
which is called the Morning Ride, and just cool people in there. It's a cool vibe. I mean, I think that was one of the first things when you and I first went there and just hung out. It was like, man, this is a cool. It feels like if we were gonna build a tap room, if we were gonna, which we might one day,
Someday, yeah.
might be in the future. This is kind of what it feels like in terms of just just a cool, relaxed feel, but it's clean, it's well kept. Great people working there. Maurice and Lynn, who run the place, are awesome to talk to. They're huge Noles. They got married at an FSU football game.
Yes, they did.
Or at least got engaged. I can't remember the story, but they're huge FSU fans.
They were brought out at midfield at halftime. It was a special day.
Unbelievable. And I think they called the plays that game.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, they're awesome people. We love their beer, and you should go check it out. Go up to Tavello. A lot of times on the weekends, they'll have live music. Right behind Tavello in that patio, there's a green space where there's like a kind of a band shell, and sometimes they'll have concerts on the weekends, but also just on any night of the week. Go up there, have dinner in Thomasville, and check out Tavello afterwards for a nightcap.
Perfect. And soon enough, it'll be football season. There'll be weekends in which it's entirely possible to sit outside and not complain about the heat. We'll get there. We are getting there. Ira, today we enter into the 50s. 59 days and 20-something hours until we start college football, buddy. I know, I talked about it before, but that's okay. We're getting there.
Speak of heat real quick. How hot you think Corey Clark is today? So again, just
Woo.
you missed the beginning of the show. Corey's he's I don't think we explained where he is. He's out today. He's at a baseball event camp or something like that with his son. Brady's playing baseball, and in Atlanta in the middle of late June, and spending all day at the park. So I got to think, first of all, the SPF, I don't know if you think he's going with the SPF 150?
150, whatever, the most extraordinary SPF. I wouldn't go, first of all. I tell my son he's on his own. I mean, listen, how many of these tournaments do I have to attend to before you believe that I love you? I'm not doing it anymore. You're going to go play baseball. You've done it a million times before. Good luck to you.
I've seen you hit a ball. I've seen you catch a ball. We've covered it.
Yeah.
But
many times over. I'm not doing it all day. I'll show up late. Like, okay, you're going to be here playing baseball for 18 hours. I'll show up at hour 14. We're not doing the all day. I'm out here at 7 a.m. watching you play baseball, and I'm still here at 7 p.m. watching you play baseball.
It's crazy because what it speaks to is the fact that the reason parents are the way they are now, I believe, the parents in our generation who will sit at the park for 6, 7, 8 hours is because we remember when we were 12 years old and we got dropped off at the park.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe your parents hung out and watched your Little League games. My parents did not. My parents, I got dropped off at the park, or I rode my bike to the park, or I walked to the park. My parents weren't hanging out watching 2 or 3 hours of Little League baseball. So I think when we had kids, we felt like that's what we have to do. We need to be the parents, the supportive, present parents that maybe we didn't have at times, or maybe I'm just speaking to myself. But I just feel like nowadays you see in high school baseball games or middle school baseball games or football games, all these parents there. And I do not remember that when we were kids. I don't remember seeing that many parents in the stands back in the day.
Well, you grew up in a tough area of Miami. Most of those people were fearful they'd get robbed if they went to those games, so they stayed clear. I would tell you this. I think it's important early, but here's the distinction. I think you take your kids when they're early in a sport and you're supportive. You watch them grow within the sport. Hey, man, that kid's in high school. Buck up, soldier. You don't need me here for these travel tournaments. You're practically a grown-ass man. You're about to be in college. You do not need me here. I was there for you when you were 9. I don't need to be here for you when you're 17, 18 years old at the ballpark all day. Get it together, man. Yeah, I don't know the reasoning, but I know that travel baseball is not something that I had to endure, and I'm forever grateful, buddy. Hey, good for you, Corey. You're a great father. I hope it works out. I hope Brady's in the major leagues in no time, and we'll all be thinking it was well worth it. You can miss all the Seminole headlines in the world with that MLB money that's coming in. By the way, Cal Raleigh hit home run number 32 last night. Buddy, this is getting silly.
It's unbelievable. I mean, he was a great player. I mean, he was a really good college baseball player.
Yeah.
But man alive, this is unbelievable. I mean, he's gonna own that city. The big dumper is what they call him.
The big dumper.
Yes. Man, he's incredible. And he's just a cool kid. Like I thought when I think back to Cal Raleigh at Florida State, I thought really good catcher, good hitter. and cool kid, like nice kid, really, again, like Florida State's been lucky to have a lot of athletes through the years that you really just like. You like his people, and Cal Raleigh's one of the top ones. And man, it's unbelievable what he's become.
I'm going to give you a number here that'll blow you away. He is on pace for a 10-7 F-WAR, which the record is owned by Buster Posey. Ira, Buster Posey had a 9.8 for a season. Go look it up if you guys don't understand advanced statistics, and I'm not being condescending. There are a lot of them. But one of the measurements of the greatest seasons ever for a catcher, Buster Posey holds one of those records, and he's on pace to have that record broken by Cal Raleigh. Can you imagine that we're sitting here going, well, the two greatest seasons a Major League Baseball catcher has ever had in the modern era anyhow are owned by Florida State catchers?
It's catcher you. It's catcher
That's all
you
we
over
do.
here.
That's all we do.
But that's the point. Like Buster is held on such a high pedestal, rightly so. Nobody ever thought that Cal Raleigh would someday break a Buster Posey record. I mean, it's incredible. He was great. He was a great college baseball player. But this is unbelievable. And he just cool. and every time when he got to 22 home runs, you're like, oh, have a nice first half there, Cal. Yeah. And then 25, then 28, and he's breaking records. And it's like, what in the world?
Johnny Bench records. It's insane. Hey, headliner questions are forthcoming. Stay with. These should be good ones. Coming up next.
Picture this. It's midnight and you're lying in bed, scrolling through this new website you found, hitting the add to cart button on that item you've been looking for. After 15 minutes, you decided you've done enough damage to your wallet and decide to check out. But you remember that your wallet or credit card is in the living room. Just as you're getting ready to abandon your cart, that's when you see it, that purple shop button that has all of your payment and shipping information saved. That's Shopify. And there's a reason so many businesses sell with it, because Shopify makes everything easier, from checkout to creating your own storefront. Shopify is the commerce platform behind 10% of all e-commerce in the United States, from household names like Mattel and Seminole headlines to brands just getting started. Shopify gives you that leg up from day one with hundreds of beautiful, ready-to-go templates to express your brand style. And forget about all the code. And did I mention that iconic purple Shop Pay button that's used by millions of businesses around the world? It's why Shopify has the best converting checkout on the planet. If you want to see less carts being abandoned, it's time for you to head over to Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/warchant. Go to shopify.com/warchant. Shopify.com/warchant.
Hour number 2, headliner questions coming your way. Thanks for tuning in. It's just Ira and myself today. Corey being a good dad on the road at a baseball tournament throughout the day, but that's okay. It has flown past. We got plenty of content. Castellanos just doesn't believe Alabama's got a shot. We should talk about that left and right. That's a lot of fun. I'm sure some of these questions we'll actually talk about that. Before we get to them, we need to say thanks to Dr. Birch. Love Dr. Birch. Love Birch Orthodontics. Love the staff. Love the work that they've done for our children. All of your children, all of my children, and many of the children of Tallahassee have benefited greatly because of Dr. Birch and her great staff at Birch Orthodontics.
Yeah, man. Again, if you had told me 10, 15, well, probably 15 years ago, if you had told me that one day I'm going to be talking about an orthodontist on our show every week, I probably wouldn't have believed you, because I never was around like kids. Nobody in my family got braces when we were kids. Again, man, I addressed this in the first hour. My parents didn't care. They didn't show up to anything. They didn't.
I was not his own in the world, kids.
They didn't care about my teeth, but it's like, and so when we went in that process, and my oldest Molly, thankfully, she had so many issues with hers early on that we knew we had to do something about it. So then we sat down. We went to several different orthodontists and just did not have good experiences until we went to Dr. Birch's office. And the first thing was her staff. They were just amazing how much time they took with her, made her feel at ease, kind of talked us through the process. And then as Dr. Birch did the work she did and we got to know her, we felt so much better about the whole situation. Then all 3 of our kids went there. But my point to all that is to say, I think there are probably people listening to this thinking like that their kids, the teeth aren't perfect. We can live without it. When you see the results and then you see how the kids feel about it, after the process and how confident that makes them and their smile and makes them feel about the way their teeth look, it really is. It's well worth the time and the effort and the commitment that they put into it. And she does all the latest techniques and advancements, and they've got a great staff. And go visit if you're thinking about that process. Go to Birch Orthodontics, get a free consultation. They'll sit down with you, explain it all, how the process works, and they'll just make you feel at ease, because if you haven't been through it, it can be kind of a daunting situation.
All good points, Ira. All spot on. Well done, sir. I like this first question, and it's from the OG headliner, Sean. Because I had this conversation with my oldest the other day when LSU captured yet another national championship in baseball. By the way, that was a weird ass development, that whole situation. Can we get a handle on umpires? Can we get a handle on? I mean, seriously, for those that don't know, obviously they tossed the coach and the first base coach in the first inning. Now, the backdrop, I know you know this, Ira, but setting the stage for everybody, and then I'll ask the question. So the umpire that ejected Coastal Carolina's manager, Kevin Schnall, and by the way, Kevin is a hothead. He's got his own issues, but I kind of like him. Angel Campos is the umpire that threw him out, okay? Angel Campos was a major league umpire that couldn't cut the mustard and who they never made a full-time umpire because he was overly sensitive and had rabbit ears and his temperament. Basically, he was fired because of his temperament. He had a situation not just this year in the College World Series, but last year in a super regional with Clemson, in which he kicked out their best player in the first inning of a game because he had rabbit ears in that one and didn't like somebody questioning balls and strikes. And I'm sorry. I mean, this guy had 23 ejections, by the way, in 580 games in the majors, which is considered alarmingly high. So they didn't have him come back. They said, have a good day. He went into the college ranks, and he's been a problem. What are we doing in college baseball? It's the national championship. I get that Schnall should have probably backed down and probably didn't need to come out of the dugout to make his point. But, dude, when it's the national championship, don't you as an umpire walk over to him before ejecting him and say, look, man, I don't want to do this, but we're getting really close here to me throwing you out of the game. Get a handle on yourself. I'm done listening to it. I'm done. I've heard you made your point. I'm done. You don't just turn and fire a guy out of there in the national championship game.
To me, it was very similar to when Link got tossed in the regional, because, again, Link. Sometimes coaches know what they're getting into. Sometimes they want to get tossed. Sometimes they at least want to get up to that line, and then they'll decide whether they want to cross the line. Link Jarrett was baffled. He could not believe he got tossed in that situation. And the same thing with Schnall. I mean, again, because you know the stage that this game is on, how important and a team's season is on the line. You can't go into it with the mindset of this is my field. You can't disrespect me. Man, you're not here to see you. We're not here to see the umpires. Your job is to de-escalate those situations, not ramp them up. It was ridiculous, man. And the think that, again, I don't know that Coastal Carolina is going to win. LSU was the best team. They were probably going to win it anyway. But you can't do that because you're having a bad day or you've got a bad attitude, completely change the fortune of a team when their season's on the line. It was just ridiculous. And I think you ask if it ever is going to change. I do like the fact it happened on that stage. Everybody saw it. Everybody thought it was ridiculous. And maybe that will lead to some change. But it's ridiculous. Umpires in college baseball, in baseball in general, some of them are terrible. But for it to be in college, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, by the way, the head of NCAA baseball umpires is retiring. And that was a separate controversy, by the way. There was this thought that he was already being pushed out. So to have all of this to happen is very, very fascinating. You hit on the key thing there. Umpires have never seemed to embrace de-escalation. They tend to challenge. They tend to bow up, take off their mask, which is already in and of itself an aggressive move. Like I'm having a discussion with you. I'm yelling at you from the dugout. You yank your mask off and walk towards me. We're already starting now to escalate the situation. And men, we're all pig-headed dudes. We all have too much pride and testosterone. If a dude squares up with you, it elevates the situation immediately. Most men don't back down. It's a weakness of ours. But your job as an umpire is nobody's there to see you. Nobody is there to see you. You want this to be settled. Walk over. Hey, man, I don't want to throw you out of the championship game. Let's stop this. I heard you. Your complaint duly noted. Just something like that. And I bet it de-escalates. All right, the question reads as follows. Do you find it hard to wrap your mind around the fact that a team has won 8 baseball national championships in your adult life, and we don't have a single one? That's from Sean. Sean, yes and no. It upsets me that Coastal Carolina was on the cusp of winning their 2nd national title. They've been a program for 20 years. It's absurd. Oregon State, the team that knocked us out, has won 3 national titles. They've only ever been to the College World Series this year, the 9th time. They've only been there 9 times. They've won it 3. Miami has what, 5? I mean, Florida has, you just go on and on. Was it that year? Was it Fresno State that won the title that one year? Yeah. I mean, look, Pepperdine has a national title. Pepperdine has a national title. There are programs that aren't anywhere on the same plane as Florida State in baseball. There are programs that don't deserve to breathe the baseball air that Florida State breathes. And yet they can look them in the eye and say, well, we've won a national title and you haven't. And that hurts. It's a jab and it stings, and it always stings. But then you come back to baseball is baseball. Baseball is weird. It's a sport that is probably, I think, the cruelest of all the sports. The best team doesn't always win. A lot of times the best team doesn't have a chance to even compete for a title. They get bounced for whatever reason, especially the format in college baseball, which is truncated in a way that's even different from Major League Baseball. You're not playing 4 out of 7 series where your depth can win out. You're playing one-offs. And you have a bad day and you're in the loser's bracket. Good night, Irene.
Yeah, I mean, the other day, the Orioles beat the Yankees. The Yankees have Max Fried on the mound. The Orioles are playing like 4 or 5 backups because they've got some guys banged up, and the Orioles somehow win that baseball game. It was a one game. If they played, they lost the next 2. If they had played 7 games, the Orioles would have lost 4 quickly, probably 4 out of 5, and they would have been done. But they won that first game just on a crazy day. Max Fried wasn't Max Fried, and they got the win. So that's what can happen. The other thing, though, like I guess when I look at Florida State baseball and that thing with LSU, because I was thinking about this when you guys went out there a few years ago for the Super Regional, and you guys were marveling about the 6 national championships, the banners for 6 national championships at that time, and about how amazing that was. And now here we are, they've got 8. It is incredible. For whatever reason, I don't know why I felt this way, but as that game ended, I felt the urge to tweet that I think Link's going to get one. I don't know why that came to me at the moment, but I really do. I think he's going to get one. Especially I didn't cover Florida State on a daily basis till early 2000s, 2002. Florida State baseball was number 1 in the country. They went into the postseason number 1 in the country that year and got bounced by Texas.
Great job.
I wasn't here for the best of the best Mike Martin years, those 90s teams. I came down occasionally to cover some games. The fact that those teams never won it doesn't make any sense. It's beyond belief. It doesn't make any sense at all that none of those teams won a national title. But I didn't feel it in the last 20 years that, okay, yeah, they're definitely going to win one. I do believe it, man. After seeing what Link has done these last 2 years, I think he's going to get it done. I do think he's going to win a national title.
I agree with you. I said that last year before the first game against Tennessee in the College World Series. We were having a conversation about being back in Omaha and how good it feels and all of that. And I said, look, I just don't think that a guy as buttoned up as Link Jarrett is and as thorough as he is and as committed to every detail of the game that he is, yeah, I think he'll be rewarded. I think he'll win a national title. I sure hope so. I mean, we're getting old. I mean, it's starting to get you do sometimes feel cursed.
Before we're going out there with walkers to the house.
I want to be able to enjoy a Jell-O shot and still have my senses about me.
Well, man, they definitely, obviously they had some bad luck in some of those years. There's some weird circumstances. It is the weird format. And again, the format I think is better now. At least you do have the final series, which was a real positive. But yeah, I just think I don't believe in a curse. I think for a lot of those years, that Florida State team wasn't the best team in the country, and they
Right.
probably shouldn't have won the national title. But I do think Lincoln will get there.
Fairbanks writes, good evening, gentlemen. That was from last night when you sent the prompt out. Yay, sausage. They must have the honey fried chicken back on the menu. Official visited the way Norvell and staff cooked before the dead period, huh? Does this hot streak mean anything in June if we don't sign them in December? Well, no, Fairbanks, of course not. And we said this before, but I will say this. I think you have said this. I know I have too. It beats the no. It beats the hell out of the no. I'll take a yes in June more than I'll take a no. Listen, they've got a little bit of momentum going right now. Ira, you tweeted out about the number of 4 stars. I got another one since you've sent that tweet. Yeah, there's no denying that they've had a little success here. But everybody in their right mind knows a couple of things. None of it will matter if they suck. All of those kids will decommit if we're awful. And then number 2, even if we're good, you're going to hold your breath to that final day because we've watched a lot of crazy things happen on signing day. It's hard to trust it, but it does beat the alternative. At least you have a positive buzz going right now as opposed to, well, they just whiffed on another one, because that was the feeling you were getting for a long time about recruiting. Was it would get down to the last couple of moments when a kid was going to decide, and invariably he chose the other side. And you'd go, well, I mean, we got used. The feeling was we were constantly getting used for more money from somewhere else, which is the modern game of recruiting, by the way.
Yeah, it's happening everywhere.
Yeah, that happens everywhere. Everybody does that. But when you haven't been good at it, and then you get burned multiple times, especially high-profile burns, then the assumption is that you're being played all the time and that nobody else is, which is simply not true. But good for them. They've got a little momentum. Hopefully they'll cash it in with a good football season.
Yeah, and 100%. None of it matters. Agree with the question. If you don't win football games, none of it's going to matter. But that's because there'll be a regime change.
That's correct.
In the coaching staff. But going back to why coaches get fired. Why do coaches get fired a lot of times? Is because they know they can't recruit anymore. Like the administration realizes they can't. They're not going to be able to get players. Even if we wanted to keep this coaching staff into next year, they won't be able to recruit. People aren't going to buy tickets. There's no belief in this program. We've got to make a change. That's when coaches usually get fired. And so when you finish a 2-10 season, and Mike Norvell makes the changes he made, part of why you make those changes is it gives you a chance to recruit again. You bring in a Gus Malzahn and these coaches. You bring in Tony White on that side of the ball and those coaches. Now they've got relationships with players that believe in them from their previous relationships. You can sell something new, something fresh again. And that's what they've done. And listen, they would not have gotten Jaden O'Neal at quarterback probably if it wasn't for Gus Malzahn. Now, maybe they don't lose the quarterback that Schmeigel, who originally committed, if they didn't bring in Gus Malzahn. But Jaden O'Neal does like Gus Malzahn in his offense. Devin Carter, Dexter Carter's son, decommitted from Florida State a year ago because he didn't like what they were doing at receiver, didn't believe in what the future was going to be there. You bring in a new position coach, Tim Harris, who knows Dexter Carter. They've actually worked, they've actually coached in the same circles in the high school level. And so that helped get Devin Carter back. So you've done some things by making those changes. It's allowed you to have this success in recruiting in June. But yeah, ultimately, man, we all know they've got to win games. And then that's just to give you a chance to hold on to those guys at the wire.
Yeah.
But if you don't do any of this, then you don't even have that chance. And you just end up having to spend a fortune at the signing deadline, which they did last year, just to get what they could get.
Yeah, and it's funny because we know that the headlines. We're doing headlines. We do know that the recruiting headlines have shifted because of June now being the most important month with all this stuff, and so naturally, anything that happens in June, A, it's hard to wrap your mind around because that's not the way it used to be, and B, by definition, you're going to have to wait and see how the year plays out as to whether or not that June momentum carried over. That's for anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, you can sign the number 1 class in the country in June or get verbal commitments from people in June left and right. I don't care if you're Ohio State or Georgia. You go out and lose 5 games, you're not keeping those commits. That's not happening. People begin to doubt you. So we'll see. And to your point, if they have a poor season this year, you're talking about recruiting in an entirely different way because we're talking about the new head coach and his staff.
Right.
That's all you're talking about if they're bad this year, and that's the reality of the situation. Good afternoon, 2/3 of you not missing showtime at all, says Walter. So let's talk about 13-0, 2-10, and 13-0. Will that be thought of as an all-time great recovery season, or will the ACC cupcake schedule be criticized like most years? Well, Walter, it couldn't happen this year because let's say they go undefeated this year. You will have beaten a top 10 road team in Clemson. You will have beaten another top 10 team in Miami. You would have beaten freaking Bama, and you would have won on the road at Florida at the end of the year. You criticize all you want, but nobody would buy it. This would be an all-time year to go undefeated.
We got to give Walter credit because I think he's the first person I know of that has uttered the phrase 13-0 in relation to Florida State football after last season. So congratulations, Walter. That's a world we all want to live in. But the story would just be, I mean, honestly, Mike Norvell would be celebrated.
Yeah.
For doing, I mean, all the criticism, all the barbs he's taken over the last year, which he was well deserved. How do you go 2-10 after 13-1 or 13-0? To come back from that would be one of the all-time amazing coaching jobs in the administration. Everybody else, anybody who's played a role in this would be celebrated. I don't think people would question who you played in that scenario.
Also, it's not going to happen. So,
I mean, look, were you the kid that told everybody there's no Santa? Was that who you were, Jeff Cameron?
I'm saying I'm a realist. I live in this world. I'm pragmatic. Don't be out here dreaming 13-0 up. It's not happening. If you could have one player from any FSU team on the roster, this roster, who would it be and what would their record be with them? This is from the dad guy. He goes on to say, if this line is decent, I would take Dalvin Cook and we would go 11-1. Okay, dad guy. My default answer is always Ira, Jameis Winston.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
I'm always going to take Jameis Winston.
2013 Jameis Winston specifically.
Yes, that 13 Winston is a freak show. It's what led to him being ranked and drafted number 1 in the NFL draft, lest we forget, by the way. It is also a Heisman winning campaign, and it wasn't close. And that dude made every throw that any NFL quarterback's ever made that year. It is unreal how he changed the game. Pre-snap, accuracy, a whole bunch of big D energy. There's a whole lot of everything going on here, man. That guy was the be-all, end-all. It changes everything about how you run offense and how you play the game. So my answer is Jameis Winston.
It's a good one. It's a good one. He's the great thing about Jameis was not only was he a phenomenal quarterback, not only was he just, everything you wanted, but the charisma was so important because, again, you go back to that speech, which we didn't see at the time.
Right.
It was in the locker room at Clemson, but put a smile on your face, that whole speech. I mean, how do you as a player, you've been in the locker room, you've been in a college locker room, like what would that do for you if you're already a Telvin or a LaMarcus Joyner or somebody, you're already a phenomenal athlete, and then you've got that guy leading you? I mean, there's nothing you can't do in that moment.
Well, and that guy leading you from the most important position.
Oh, exactly.
That's the thing. Like, it's one thing to be a charismatic right guard. But, buddy, it's the quarterback.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I think the other thing, I don't want to go with Jameis just because you did, and I think that's the right answer. I'm going to go with a guy like, I'll go with Dion or Derek Brooks. I just think like a defensive player that the other team has to have to know where he's at on every play. Like, it affects their scheme and their play calling where he lines up, or a Ron Simmons, just like a dominant, preternatural, gifted athlete who's really smart and can make decisions, get everybody lined up. I think that can elevate your entire defense. So I'd go with somebody like that too.
No, I don't mind it. Yes, you're right. These monsters that changed game planning and people had to double team Marvin Jones. Changed game and would just wipe you clean, like just take you out. Guys that were nasty. I'm a big fan. Seminole Headlines, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV continues in a moment. Back to headliner questions, and away we go. This is from Vishal. Hey, Vishal. Tip of the cap to you. Hi, Ira and Jeff. Given TC's comments this week, and it is list season, I'd be interested in getting your top 5 most cocky FSU football players of all time. Well, you'd start with Dion.
Yeah.
That's number 1 with a bullet. There's nobody close.
Yeah. T-Buck's up there.
T-Buck is way up there. And these are all guys, I say this with appreciation.
Oh, yeah. Love.
A lot of love. I say this next one, even though he didn't say things that like you'd look back and go, oh my God, that was absurd. But his attitude on the field, his demeanor, and his body language told you that he believed every second of every game that he ever played in, that he was the best player on the field, and it wasn't close. Peter Warwick. Peter Warwick, after every catch, he'd have a gyration. He'd do a little thing, and he'd have the little hip swagger. He would do something, and you're like, dude, that guy's a son of a bitch. And they know they can't do anything with him. He was a freak. I'm so glad that YouTube exists.
Oh, man.
Because, Ira, you saw it firsthand. I saw it firsthand. But for years before YouTube became a thing, there was this legend that Florida State fans would have to tell other people about who were too young to remember. And you'd be like, you never saw Peter Warwick. You've never seen a college receiver do what he did to people in the open field and the stop start and all the things that he did. And then the YouTube happened and people started to give him his just due. And that one video where people put the montage of all, it's now gone viral.
I feel like Chad Brown tweets it like 3 times a year. Like Ocho Cinco, he loves it so much he'll just tweet it out, or anytime anybody else tweets it.
But it's absurd.
Yeah, and I think he kind of, to me, I feel like there's a few players like him, very few, but kind of made SportsCenter so big back in the day because that was your only chance really to see some of those types of things. Again, we didn't live in a world where everything was on your phone 24 hours a day. Right. So you had to watch SportsCenter at 11 o'clock to see what a guy like Peter Warwick did. Or, I just think back to the Louisiana Tech game. There's just, it's just unbelievable the stuff he did. So he's definitely up there, even though, like you said, he didn't maybe always talk that way. I think there's a few other players that didn't talk much at all, but you felt it. LaMarcus Joyner is a guy like that. I mean, for a smaller dude, I just go back to the good luck with that Clemson. At the ACC kickoff.
He was thoughtful too. He was smart and interesting.
Oh, really smart.
Yeah.
Very much. As far as, guys, you saw it on the field, manifest. I don't know. Like I always felt Timrick Vanover it was a small window.
Very small window. Yeah. He had it.
But I think, he had that, just let me get the ball in my hands. Kick the ball to me one more time, Steve Spurrier.
I'd love to say it. He was technically a Nole ever so briefly.
Randy Moss.
Yeah. You couldn't have had a more arrogant player than Randy Moss. And he was amazing. Oh.
You know who, incredible confidence, Buster Davis, was a dude who, you couldn't tell Buster Davis he wasn't 6'5".
I know. And also he had the what for to back it up.
Yeah.
Because he brought the thunder to those tackles. There was no wiggling out of Buster Davis tackles. Well, Marvin never really talked all that much, but certainly Marvin knew he was the baddest man on the planet. Right. And played the game like he knew he was the baddest man on the planet. Oh, this is a fun conversation because Florida State's had hundreds of great players who knew they were great. Hundreds.
Well, in the categories, I feel like you could do a bunch of, he says list season. I think you do a bunch of different lists. You could do the players that believe they were incredible, but really weren't. The players.
A lot of those too, Ira.
The players who were super confident, but humble, never presented that. And then you've got, the Mount Rushmore of the Deions and T-Bucks and guys like that.
I think Jameis would have to be on the list.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Jameis had enormous confidence. Just simple and funny little quotes like, well, on Saturday, we're going to go.
Oh, yeah. That's what we're going to do on Saturday. Yeah. Casey Weldon's probably belongs in there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and he had to be because he had a real quarterback competition.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that wasn't a sure thing for him to be out there playing. So he had to have a whole lot of what for to him, too. Fun question, Vishal. Thank you so much. John writes, hey, fellas, that monster week 1 matchup against Alabama is looming. Fall camp will be starting soon. With so many new players and schemes to look at and evaluate, what are you most looking forward to seeing? Personally, I want to hear about the progress of our very confident quarterback. Well, listen, I will say this. Thanks for the question, John. And we don't know the answer just yet, Ira, but we won't be seeing a damn thing in the fall if the policy carries over. I mean, we don't know.
We don't know. Mike Norvell said when he shut down the spring practices, he said no decision has been made yet for the fall. So we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised. We got one scrimmage in the spring. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we got a couple of practices or a scrimmage or something on that. I also wonder if, they need to do some things to kind of generate some excitement with this team. I don't think it would be a bad idea to have an open practice for the fan base at some point if he's willing to do that. I don't think we're going back to the way it was, but it wouldn't surprise me if we got a couple of practices. But back to the question, to me, the whole thing, and I don't know, we won't know the answer in the preseason, but the one matchup that I want to see in that game, and I think Florida State, it needs to happen in that game, is does this defense with Tony White, does it create some negative plays? Does it make some big plays? Because I don't think they're going to, look, man, they're not going to stymie Alabama's running game for 4 quarters. It's not going to be, they're not just going to take away the run and force a young quarterback to make plays. But can you make big plays? Can you pick off a couple passes? Can you get a strip sack? Can you make some TFLs and put them in 2nd and 13, 3rd and 16, those situations? That's the recipe for success for me, for them to win that game or to have a chance to win that game. Tony White's defense is going to have to make some big plays. So that's the one thing I really want to see.
Lost in all of our complaints about a pathetic and embarrassingly poor offense was the fact that the defense never made plays. They never created turnovers. They never took the ball away, did anything that would create an opportunity for, well, grant you, an impotent offense. But, I'd really love to see that. Also, they were not versatile. That defense under Fuller, and, Fuller did some things okay, but God, it drove me nuts. I used to be like, man, they are going to be where you think they are going to be when you line up against Adam Fuller's defense. I mean, my complaint from day one was they couldn't effectively run zone at all. It got guys guarding a patch of grass and refusing to move off of it and just all kinds of issues. So I want to see, the diversity of what they do defensively, because we know Tony White's going to give a lot of different looks and bring pressure from a lot of different places.
Well, and that all sounds good, but it only really matters if you make plays out of it.
Right.
And again, you're going to give up some plays. I mean, the nice thing about what Adam Fuller did is you didn't give up a ton of big plays. The guys, it was simple. The guys knew what they were supposed to do. They understood their assignments. They could execute them. You weren't asking guys to do too much. That's a positive. But on the flip side, you never created big plays. Well, this defense, you're going to give up some things, but man, you've got to make big plays.
Trailer Swift says, now that we know Alabama won't be able to stop Tommy, what does our defense need to do to secure the win?
The two things he said that, and we talked about a little bit in the first hour, the two things that he said that were a little, I didn't love were the part about they can't stop me. Mm-hmm. The Alabama can't stop me. It's like, come on, man, you don't know that. Everything else he said, his confidence in himself, about what he said about torching the ACC, we can have that debate whether or not that's accurate or not, but I don't have a problem with any of it. You talking up yourself and your teammates, go for it. Saying they can't stop you was a mistake. He shouldn't have said that. And then Nick Saban's not going to be there to save them was a little silly. But I think he just got a little bit carried away. But overall, I think expressing the confidence overall, I think is a good thing.
Leaving 2-10 out of what player from the 24 team would you want on this team? Oh, okay. So, yeah. So who do you want from the 24 team, despite the fact that they were 2-10, that you would want on this team? And Tony says, my pick would be Farmer. I think he adds a win because he would be great in this defense and slots everyone down a slot. Farmer, DJ, Williams, Jenkins would have been great. Well, I thought Farmer actually had a decent season a year ago, very quietly. A lot of people didn't realize that. But if you go back and look, I think game to game, he was pretty consistently good. And so that's not a bad choice. In fact, that's probably the best choice.
Yeah, it might be. I think I would lean towards him, or Zaire Thomas. I think I don't know how great they feel at corner. Getting Jeremiah Wilson, the transfer from Houston, is a big deal. I think he's a really good corner. It helps you out. But the other corner is going to be a new starter. It's whether it's Jabril Rawls or whether it's, there's a few other guys battling for that position. Quindarius Jones. We'll see how it plays out. But if you had, I personally thought Zaire Thomas would have been better off staying for one more year. I thought that before the draft. Hope he has all the success in the world. But I do think he's a guy that could have been a little bit better, and I would have liked to have seen him on this defense.
It's a good choice, Ira, because I think we would have gotten more out of him on this defense than we got a year ago, which was so frustrating to deal with. But, yeah, we don't want to go down that road again. Chaco McNasty, Gentleman, and Corey. I was flabbergasted to learn both Ira and Jeff were drummers at one point. My question, who were your influences and what drum kit did you own? I'm thinking Jeff was a Dream Theater guy and Ira Motley Crue metalhead. That is too good. Ira, I actually had a Ludwig set back in the day. You remember that?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I had a Ludwig set, and then my buddy that I would play on his drum set had kind of like just a vintage Pearl set that I would play on. It was the black and white. Remember those
Pearl?
Black,
yeah,
the Pearl. And no, I wasn't a Dream Theater guy. That's pretty hilarious. I was always enamored. Well, first of all, a lot of different musical styles, but I couldn't do what he could do. But I always tried to do what Stuart Copeland did with the Police, because I thought he was the greatest cymbals drummer I had ever heard. And I would try to work that in, but I didn't have the hands. He was, and still is, a freak of a drummer. So that would be my answer.
So one of my friends growing up middle school and then high school is this kid, John Lengel, who weird shout out here, but he was an incredible drummer. I mean, he could do all of Neil Peart's stuff.
Right.
Like
my buddy Stephen Rafferty could do that. Yeah.
It was unbelievable. He was an incredible drummer. So we would go over to his house, or he would come over to the other friends. A bunch of kids back in the day had drum. I don't know if kids today have drum sets,
Buddy,
but a lot of kids.
I knew 4 kids that had drum sets when I was growing up. Yeah.
It was a lot more common back in the day. But anyway, I assume none of my kids got into it. But anyway, Lengel was so good. He also had a scholarship offer to FIU to play baseball. And I had a conversation with John. I said, dude, go play baseball. They're going to pay for your college, or at least part of it. You're a stud baseball player. Go play baseball. He joined a rock band, and not just like joined it like this is what we're going to do. When he was a senior in high school, turned down baseball. He joined a band with like 4 other dudes who were from South America, and
they like tour now, don't they?
Yeah, they're a big deal.
Yeah,
and I don't know how much they're touring lately, but it was called La Secta. And yeah, man, they would sell out 20,000 seat venues in Central and South America. Ricky Martin has recorded their songs. They've become like this. And John is this American kid, long blonde hair, being in a Latin rock band.
Loving life, buddy.
Things worked out okay. He's one of many people who did not listen to my advice and pursued the drumming, and it's gone
Sounds
pretty well.
Like John lived my dream life.
We would see him at wedding, through the years. You go back for weddings, kids we grew up with, and there's John with some other
beautiful Latin woman. Yes, yes, another gorgeous Latin woman. Yes, that's
after
impressive.
A few beers, I'd always pull him and say, "Hey, remember when I told you you're an idiot for not going to play baseball?"
That's hilarious. Hyperbolic Noel writes, with Texas Tech going all in, Arizona State, Indiana, SMU making it to the playoff last year, do you see a program breaking through in the next 5 to 10 years into elite status that hasn't done much in the past? If so, who would you pick? Yes, I do, Caleb. I have said that we're all going to be watching the maturation of SMU's football program in the coming years be a consistent force in the game. They've got more money than almost anybody that they have to compete against in this league. And they've got enough money to compete with anybody that they would need to compete against in the SEC. Now, this is a process, and they're not as high profile a a program, and they are stuck in a second-class league like the ACC. But it ain't going to be for money or wanting, and it won't be for facilities and their ability to attract and pay big money to players and coaches. SMU is going to be a very good football program for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I think overall, obviously Texas Tech, what they're doing money-wise is going to be an issue, but SMU is definitely the answer. And I think Rhett Lashley, it was funny. We were at the ACC. I think it was the ACC spring meetings a year ago. I don't think it was kickoff. And I asked him something about how SMU sold him on going back, because he had been there before.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes to Miami, and he's obviously having a really good career and high in demand. Like how did they convince you to go back to SMU? And he kind of looked at me like I was an idiot, which fair enough. He's not the first person. But I think he didn't say it, but I think that's what you just said is exactly what he was thinking. It's like, look, man, I'm in Texas. I've got all the resources I'll ever need. There's a hunger there. They want this more than anything. And it's not like going to UM where they're entitled and they want you to restore what they believe is theirs. You're going to a place where they are hungry. They've been eating blank for a long time since they got busted and shut down. And so, yeah, man, I think he thinks it's a perfect situation. You look at the players he's done. I think I'm also really impressed by him as a talent evaluator. Like the guys he brought over from Miami, he brought over players. He brought over dudes. And I think he's done a really good job. I think he's going to continue to be a problem.
Always remember this, too. They're not stuck out in Lubbock.
Right.
They're in Dallas, Fort Worth. I mean, if you've ever been to Dallas, it doesn't suck. And if you're a kid, you've got a big city. You're not out there in the sticks.
So thankfully, the one bad thing about this being recorded is we don't have the live chat. Sorry about that. We recorded that this morning because our boy Corey's out and we've got some other stuff going on. There's interviews this afternoon also over at FSU. But Matt Lasser, man, if he just heard that, he may clip that out and start tweeting it. You talking big about Dallas.
I like Dallas, Fort Worth. I like the area a lot. Last time I was there, I was like, this isn't so bad. But anyhow, there are cities I like more than Dallas, but I like Dallas. It's a good city. It's a good city. Point is, you can recruit to Dallas. You should be, I've never understood why Houston's not any good. I mean, Houston should be consistently good. It's the fourth largest city in America. There is a boatload of things to do. It's multicultural. Like, you ought to be able to get kids to come play at Houston, and yet Houston just forever sucks. It's just, it's weird to me. I also think San Diego State should be good at football every year. San Diego, and now they don't even have a pro football team. Go all in on your college football team. They just joined the Pac-12. I'm making a play for San Diego State if I'm a young coach, buddy. I'm going there. Seminole Headlines, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV continues in a moment. More questions. Let's keep it going here. Gentlemen, I was really sad no parents from CCU could make it to the College World Series. CCU.
College of Charleston?
Oh, okay.
I mean, or Coastal Carolina, I'm sorry.
Coastal Carolina, my bad. Well, I'm R.A. Noel, that's on me. Coastal Carolina. You have a fine line between media and fandom. If you found out FSU paid an exorbitant amount for a player and your media side thinks it's crazy, but fan says, heck yeah, would you report it? Well, we wouldn't hide what they were paying for a player. No, I'd be happy to report it.
Yeah, and I think that things have changed so much. Again, I don't think any of us in the media hid the fact that FSU flipped a bunch of kids at the last signing window because they threw a lot of money at the problem. That's it's just the way of the world. And again, look at, Miami with Carson Beck. It's funny just in a few years how that's changed. Back when Miami got a lot of grief early on when Nigel Pack and some of those guys in the basketball team, the numbers got out there of what they were going to be getting. And people were like, oh, you can only recruit because of money. Well, Miami got Carson Beck for $4 million apparently, and nobody's laughing at Miami. They're like, man, it would be nice if we could spend $4 million on a quarterback. So I don't think it's a negative. Now, outright cheating in the new era, maybe that'll be an issue, but I just don't think it's seen as a negative anymore.
No, it's not at all. In fact, it shows you're committed. It shows you really want to win. I wouldn't have a problem with it. I would report it if it was necessary. Yeah. Fishing Noles says, is the record the only thing that matters with regards to Mike's job? Or does how the results play out matter just as much? 3 last-second losses is much different than 3 blowouts. Oh, no, I'm with you on that, BFG. If they lose the 4 biggest games on their schedule, will it be disappointing? Yes. If they win the other 8, does that matter? Of course. If they lose those 4 games in which they're underdogs in all of them, Alabama, Miami, Clemson, and Florida, how do they lose those games? Do they get boat raced? Is it 31-7, 35-3, 38-14, and 42-20? Well, we got a problem, man, because you're not competitive at that point against anybody who's any good at all. Are they all within 7? You know, it does change your outlook. You know, if you go to Clemson and lose 31-24, if you play Alabama to a 27-21 game or whatever, like all of a sudden you're like, okay, we're there with the best teams on our schedule. They've come a long way from 2-10. Bite the bullet another year and let's go. They get blown out in those 4 games. There are going to be plenty of people who wash their hands of Mike.
Yeah, no, I think ultimately the record will matter from the standpoint of I do feel like if you're 8-4, even if those 4 games don't look great, people aren't going to feel good about it. But I don't think you're paying somebody $50 million to go away if you went 8-4. But yeah, it totally matters in terms of how they look at anything else, especially that 7-5. To me, that's where it's going to, if they end up at 7-5, that's going to be a huge part of it. Because right now, I think a lot of people sitting at home or watching this would say, oh, if they're 7-5, they need to get rid of them, or 6-6, they need to get rid of them. That's where I would say, man, if they were in all of these games, and if it's clear this team is playing hard and competing, and you can see it, man, like when you're watching a team, you know whether or not they believe in what they're doing, if they're rallying around each other or they're not. And if that's apparent, even though the record's not exactly what you want, I think you can live with it and maybe try to make it work, especially with that buyout. But if they look ugly in those games, then yeah, man, it makes the decision a whole lot easier.
This guy just taking shots at our teams, and I don't know where this comes from, Seth. Fellas, when are you going to put some respect on Kevin Cash? When have I ever disrespected Kevin Cash? He's a Nole. I love him. He's a great manager.
I saw firsthand last week. I was in attendance last week at what a good manager he is.
Not just that. I like the Rays. I grew up down there. The team didn't exist when I grew up down there until later, so I'm a lifelong Pirates fan, but the Rays are who I root for in the American League. I want them to win the whole thing. Now, this is the part, Seth, that I don't understand. Consistently hands L's to Jeff's ass Pirates, Ira's ass Orioles, and Corey's ass Braves. He's about to hit 1,000 wins as a manager, and if he were with an organization that actually cared about winning, he'd already have a ring. Seth, where's this hostility come from? I don't get it. I've never had a problem with Cash or the Rays. And by the way, don't puff out your chest for beating the Pittsburgh Pirates, dumbass.
Or the Orioles.
Yeah.
I will say
you guys
this.
fell off a cliff this year.
I will say this. It dawned on me as I sat there in the stands at beautiful Steinbrenner Field, Jeff.
Yeah. 150 degrees.
As I sat there and watched an 8-0 lead become a 12-8 loss, I did think about the fact that Kevin Cash is really a great manager. I mean, he did some things in that game. First of all, just keeping the team when you're down 8-0 and not letting them fold. But then the way he handled his bullpen, the Orioles can't hit left-handed pitching generally. And so, man, he used every left. If you had if you could throw a baseball with a left hand, you were pitching in that game that day. And I knew it was going to kill him the next day because the Orioles, they wouldn't have any lefties available. But he was like, once he saw they had a chance, they could win that game. They good. They did. And no, man, he's definitely an excellent manager. Doesn't get the just due he deserves because of where he's managing. At some point, though, do you think that bothers him? Do you think he sits there and says, you know what, man, like, let me go coach the Giants or the A's or the Yankees, or not the A's, the Yankees or a team that's going to invest and see what that looks like?
Maybe, but they win enough games and they make the playoffs a lot of years, so he's not missing out on the postseason. And by the way, you could feel bad about it until you cash your check every 2 weeks, and then you're feeling pretty good. He's Ira Schafel. I'm Jeff Cameron. Thanks to Ben for producing. We appreciate you. Corey will be back next time. You guys be well. There's a lot going on. Go to warchant.com. Obviously, listen to Wake Up Warchant, JCS, all that stuff. Langston with the recruiting. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.